How's it going, guys? Today we are going to be taking a look at pork tenderloin and steakhouse mashed potatoes. This is a great recipe if you're in the doghouse with your spouse or significant other. This is guaranteed to get you out of it. This is also a great recipe if you're on a budget and trying to entertain some folks. Might not be happening too soon with the whole pandemic and everything, but I was able to find 4 pork tenderloins for about $20. If you throw tender in front of anything that has to do with steak, that's going to be easily triple the price. To start off, obviously you're going to need some pork. We're going to need some olive oil. We will be using about a 1/4 cup, and we just have a standard extra virgin olive oil. You're going to need about 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. Honey Dijon mustard will do also. About a 1/4 cup of packed brown or yellow sugar. You're going to need 1 tablespoon of cider vinegar. Here we used an apple cider vinegar. 3/4 of a cup of low sodium soy sauce is what the recipe calls for, but we used regular soy sauce here. 1 tablespoon of worcestershire sauce. And lastly, some salt and fresh ground pepper. I'm also going to cook up some vegetables to go along with this meal. We're going to use some asparagus and broccoli, but any vegetable, you should be able to follow the same steps we do here and it'll come out awesome. For our mashed potatoes, you are going to need some buttermilk, about a 1/2 cup. We couldn't find any in store, so we used some lactose free here. It shouldn't matter too much what type of milk. 4 ounces of cream cheese. We just used original Philadelphia. If for some reason you're on a diet, light cream cheese would work just as well. About 5 cloves of whole garlic. We had some large garlic cloves here, so I just used 4. Just make sure they're peeled. About 6 cups of chicken broth, or whatever it takes to fill your large pot. And lastly, some red potatoes. The recipe calls for mini red potatoes, just diced up, but I couldn't find any in store, so I went with 3 large red potatoes. To start off, you're going to want to make your marinade. I did this at about lunchtime so that in about 4 hours later it would be ready to go in the oven. I decided to put about 2 cloves of chopped garlic into the marinade itself. If this is too much garlic for you, you can skip this step because the mashed potatoes do have quite a bit in them already. To start off the marinade, we're going to put in our brown sugar. Once again, we are using about a 1/4 cup. And once in the bowl, I just chopped it up so that it would mix in with the soy sauce a bit nicer. Next, you're going to add 3/4 cups of soy sauce, and if you can, get soy sauce with a bigger spout because it feels like I was sitting here for hours waiting for soy sauce to pour out. Next up is the 1/4 cup of olive oil. Go ahead and just dump that in. The 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. 1 tablespoon of, I'm not even going to try again. 2 teaspoons of our Dijon mustard. A coarser ground Dijon mustard would also work really nicely with this. And lastly, you're going to want to season to taste and add in your garlic in our case. Once in your bowl, you're going to want to whisk to combine. The only thing that really has to dissolve here is the brown sugar, so you're really just trying to give it a good mix. Once mixed, I'm going to transfer the marinade into a large Ziploc bag where we will then put our pork tenderloins into for the marinating. Like I said before, this is a really good, economical, tasty recipe. I got these 4 tenderloins for $20 at our local supermarket, and 3 of the tenderloins fed about 6 of us. When you're taking the pork out of the package and transferring it into the marinade, you're going to try and be really careful not to spill any of the pork juice or the marinade. This can get very messy very quickly. It hasn't happened to me recently, but it definitely has happened in the past. Once all the pork has been transferred over, you're going to want to give it a nice tight seal and then a bit of a massage just so all the marinade covers all of the pork. While the pork is in the fridge marinating, you're going to want to take it out about every hour and do this a couple times just to make sure that everything gets a nice even marinade. After waiting patiently for 4 hours, you're going to want to remove the pork from the fridge. Trying not to spill anything once again, you're going to remove as much of the tenderloin as you're going to bake and put it into a casserole dish. Here we just used the 3 mostly because that's all that would fit. Once everything's all nicely nestled into the casserole pan, you're going to take about a half cup of your marinade and pour it over top of your tenderloins. Once again, seasoning the meat after it's marinated in order to not dry it out. Seasoning everything is just kind of a good cooking rule of thumb in general, and it will really take any basic dish to the next level. Our tenderloin is going into the oven at about 400 for 30 minutes or until it reaches an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it has been cooking for about 10 minutes, every 5 minutes after that you're going to want to take some of the juices from the side and baste it back over top of the tenderloin with a spoon just to ensure it doesn't dry out. Next up, we're going to prepare our vegetables. We're going to start here with the asparagus just by snapping them at their natural breaking point. And yes, for those who didn't know, asparagus has a natural breaking point. For our broccoli, we're just going to cut the head into large chunks. Really, this is where you can choose. I just like a more manageable bite-sized piece. Once you have your vegetables to the desired size, we're going to put them into another casserole dish to go in the oven as well. All we're going to add to the vegetables is a drizzle of our olive oil from before and some salt and pepper. You can do many vegetables this way and they will turn out great, I promise you. We're just going to put these in the oven with our pork at about 15 minutes left in its cooking time. To start off our mashed potatoes, you are going to want to cube your large red potatoes into about 1-inch cubes, or for your mini potatoes you can just half them. Next, you're going to want to peel your garlic. This can be kind of a pain, so take your time. Once peeled, have your garlic cloves and throw them into the pot with your potatoes just like that. You're going to want to keep them whole at this point. Next, take your chicken broth and pour it over your potatoes and garlic in the large pot. You can do this with water too, but chicken broth just brings an extra bit of flavor. You want to use enough chicken broth that all of the potatoes are covered, and in my case it used the entirety of the chicken broth. Once everything's set up, we are going to grab our hot plate. You can use a stove just as easily. You are going to want to boil the potatoes and the chicken broth on high for about 10 minutes or until tender. You can poke a potato with a fork to test this. If tender, the fork should easily poke through. While the potatoes begin to boil, now is a good time to put your vegetables in with your pork. They should take about 15 minutes at the same 400 temperature. Once the potatoes are tender, you're going to want to remove them from the heat and strain off the excess chicken broth. Once strained, you're going to want to grab a bowl and clear off any unwanted items in your workspace. Transfer the potatoes and garlic into your large bowl, and we are ready to begin adding the other ingredients. We are going to start off by adding our cream cheese and butter. The recipe calls for a half cup of butter and 4 ounces of cream cheese, but since we were running low on butter, I just put in an extra ounce of cream cheese so we could get a similar texture. Next up, we are going to add our half cup of buttermilk, or in my case, lactose-free milk. Once all of the ingredients are added, you're going to want to take a potato masher and mash it until it reaches a desired consistency. Your mashed potatoes should look a little something like this. Once done mashing, season to taste. And guys, literally taste it. You don't want to give your guests unseasoned food.
Taters done.
Once your vegetables have been in there for about 15 minutes, you're going to want to take them out and set them to the side. Ideally, this would be timed with the pork, but at this point the pork didn't have a temperature of 145, so I left it in for about another 5 minutes. Once your pork reaches the internal temperature of 145, you're going to want to take it out and take some of the juices from around the side and baste it back onto the pork before letting it sit for about another 5 minutes to rest. Once the pork is rested, remove from the baking dish and place on a cutting board. I cut the pork into about 1-inch slices, but the thickness is really preference. It's okay for the tenderloin to still be slightly pink as long as it has reached the desired internal temperature and rested for around 5 minutes. Once cut up, put the slices back into the baking dish with all the au jus for serving. And that's pretty much all she wrote. If you're cooking for a group of people, you can put the dishes on the table for a family-style dinner, or make yourself a plate and save the rest as leftovers like the rest of us. I would just like to thank you guys for all the support so far. If you don't want to miss any future videos, make sure to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Please continue to leave suggestions in the comment section as I look forward to trying some of them in the future. I encourage you guys to try this one as it's one of my favorites, and good luck getting out of the doghouse.